I think a lot of the Web2 founders have always been on the sidelines, or let's say watching crypto from the outside, and perhaps never really, I'd say, understood how could they get the sort of exposure that, Web3 founders get.
A coin that would be the representation for tens of billions of dollars in trading volume, if we're being honest with ourselves. Don't think he ever thought that.
Now, I'm guessing this is that kind of internet capital market. This is the kind of era which brings and invites all these founders into tokenization.
Some of these founders were top four apps on the App Store that just got completely destroyed by that.
Solana has been through 2 bear cycles, and the community is unparalleled when it comes to liquidity. And of course, a lot of it is memes. A lot of people know Solana for memes, like, hey, that's the casino chain, and that's why it'll never die, because memes will never die. ICM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Bay Show. Today, I have another very special guest. And let me say, we've heard of the word internet capital market. And this word was supposed to make us believe in something. And it, just like everything else, I know there's ups and downs. There's reasons to speculate. There's reasons to believe. There's reasons to invest. And a lot of people did actually believe this was the next big thing. Not saying it's dead, because this man right here has put everything that he has on the line to make sure that he gives all of us a strong reason to believe in ICM, the Internet Capital Market. Friends, welcome Mercy on the Bay Show.
Pleasure to have you.
Mercy,
Welcome
welcome to the Bay Show. How are you feeling today?
It's been busy, losing some sleep, but I'm just as euphoric as when I started.
I can't complain, man. I'm pretty sure someone like yourself, workaholic, you're an absolute machine. I've seen your work ethics, and it's only been an absolute pleasure to be working alongside you and looking at you cook, man. But Mercy, before anything else, explain to us in simple terms, what does ICM or Internet Capital Market supposed to mean?
I think the simplest way I can describe it is it's a normie coded term for tokenization of utility products on chain. That's the simplest way I can describe it. Utility coins and crypto has been here for a while. ICM is a narrative shift. And I think internet capital markets resonates with younger entrepreneurs born after 1993 that grew up in the internet money era of making money on the internet through video games, e-com, software as a service. Many of us, I assumed yourself, grew up in that era of the proliferation of the dot-com boom. And concepts like tokenization and utility coins on chain, frankly, don't really resonate with Web2 founders or Web2 startups. And I think internet capital markets does.
Fantastic. I think that's pretty simple to put it out there. But, I'm just going to go one step ahead and ask, like, when you say utility coins, does this necessarily mean, are we looking to target the Web2 audience that's kind of, walking into the Web3? Or is it, very specific blockchain products or projects? Or it could be just anything that has some sort of utility?
I think anything that has utility. I think, broadly speaking, utility coins on chain historically have been Web3 centric products, trading terminals, wallets, perp dexes, swapping products, cool liquidity management software. These have all been mostly Web3 centric products. Only as recently have we started to see Web2 founders and startup founders utilize these mechanisms of tokenization to IPO on the internet through tokenization.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And, because I think a lot of the Web2 founders have always been on the sidelines, or let's say watching crypto from the outside, and perhaps never really, I'd say, understood how could they get the sort of exposure that, Web3 founders get. Now, I'm guessing this is that kind of internet capital market. This is the kind of era which brings and invites all these founders into blockchain, into crypto, right? Into tokenization. I guess a good question is like, why now?
These things have occurred, frankly speaking, internationally for a long time. But to speak from a privileged position of being born in the United States, the United States is the largest capital formation country in the world. It also just happens to be the most litigious country in the world. The reason why capital can form really well here is because of the legal frameworks this country has built. So the reason why it's happening now is because of the current government's administration and cabinet, particularly the SEC. Historically speaking, the SEC has been very anti-crypto. They've targeted builders. They push innovation outside the United States. They push capital outside the United States. My entire experience in crypto has been mostly watching jobs and opportunities leave the United States to other countries. And, receiving Wells notice while working in Animoca Brands, going through that process of just, the indemnification of founders that want to build the United States being pushed overseas. Paul Atkins recently has been pushing for something called Project Crypto, which is providing tremendous legal clarity and a very opportunistic gray zone for builders to start building in the United States. And they have been hinting that they perceive tokenization no longer as a security. And that's important. That's extremely important that founders can feel confident to raise capital, off-chain or on-chain, to build crypto products in the United States. And historically speaking, that just was never possible. There are some other things that I think are important catalysts, but frankly speaking, that I would say is probably the core catalyst.
Yeah, that's a very fair take. I think given the current administration and everything that we're seeing progressing so quick and fast. I mean, price action aside, there has been a lot of development for the positive notion of crypto and blockchain as a whole, right? But Mercy, one thing I want to ask you this, right? You've been an absolute machine in this space, and you're one of those OGs that has put in a lot of work in building the sort of foundation, that sort of community. You're the community guy. Like, I've always seen you out there hosting spaces, really building community from ground up. Why are you the right person? I know you call yourself the mission founder, but like, what do you feel very passionate about, ICM and perhaps your past experience? Tell us more about, what you've done and perhaps why you're the right person to build this.
Yeah, I think, ICM.run is a primitive. What that means is there isn't really anything to compare it to. ICM.run is the first on-chain incubator. My experience in crypto, when you would meet firms, agencies, advisory firms that specialize in tokenization, are historically mostly negative. They're very parasitic. These companies exist solely to extract value from retail traders by helping companies to tokenize. They serve as a very selfish party in most cases. My exposure to that when I was initially incubating a few private companies of my own this past year and helping them tokenize made me really think deeply about how I wanted to grow in the space. So to answer the question, am I the right person? I'm the right person for now, but I hope that what we're doing with ICM.run makes a lot of other people who are in a similar position to me to think a little more deeply about how they can take what they're doing in regards to tokenization, incubation, bringing products to market, and remove the black box nature that most advisory firms exist under. Historically speaking, advisory firms don't take 1 to 5% of supply projects. They take 10 to 20. They don't do it for free. They take large sums of capital up front. And frankly speaking, if you look at the tokens that most advisory firms that bring tokens to market, they're historically not very successful. So in many ways, me tokenizing my incubator was a bit of a way for me to visualize how I would help a token go to market. If I wasn't able to successfully bring an on-chain incubator's token to market, it's a bit of a litmus test to see how I would be able to help a product that we're incubating, the token, go to market too. Many of these teams that specialize in tokenization, I don't know if they're really able to do that. And that's a funny thing. It's a finicky thing, really. And I don't want to say it was more of like a flex. It's not the intent, but I think that if anybody has been impressed with how ICM.run has come to market, that should be a bit of a visualization or a sign of what we plan to do with products that we plan to tokenize and bring to market with too.
Yeah, for sure, man. I remember that few weeks of just flooding my timeline with ICM.run, and especially you guys kind of broke the timeline with the NFTs that you guys launched, and how I think no one predicted the sort of volumes that you guys generated, and I think projects usually when they launch they have this like spike, and then they fall quick as well. I think we're seeing that constant, I think, growth linear where like we're it's always fresh to see ICM dot run on their timeline with the kind of spaces that you guys run, and you guys have those super stacked advisors, I will say, right? And I guess let's talk a little bit about the advisors, right? You talk a little bit about how ICM dot run is a primitive, and that will become one day. You hope it becomes larger than yourself, and I think you've kind of proven that. Now, talk to us a little bit more. How did you take this idea to these advisors, right? How did you get them to believe in this idea? And perhaps how involved are they or will they be with these projects that come through this incubation?
I think initially when I reached out to them, the general thesis, and I want to be careful with the board advisor, they are mentors in the DAO. We have a mentor side of the DAO and a contributor side of the DAO. You yourself being one of the contributors of the DAO as well. When we created the DAO, there was a lot of what I would say armchair opinion leaders talking about internet capital markets. Conversation was mostly being led by traders, which is important, but frankly speaking, they were leading the conversation. So I wanted, when I was putting this incubator together, I wanted to bring a group of people together that had direct experience with tokenization. It's a unique experience. And when I was selecting mentors, our rule was the mentor themselves had to have tokenized a product that reached a 300 billion market cap. Or they have needed to tokenize 3+ projects that reached combined over $1 billion in market cap. We selected 20 mentors. We're now at 22 because we're adding some more as we go. And that was important to me. Tokenization is very nonce. It is not a 1 + 1 = 2. There's many ways you get to the end result. But I can tell you that tokens that go very far and go to the distance, it is a high science. I say that often, but it's also not luck. There's a lot of work that goes into making a successful token go to market. Timing plays into it, luck plays into it, product market fit plays into it, really good comms plays into it, really good communication, really good community building plays into it. And there's a lot of people who would want to position themselves as a mentor in the DAO. But the purpose of mentors is to be able to help the projects we incubate go to market, right?
Absolutely.
So who better to help a token go to market than somebody who has successfully done that? And we wanted to make sure we selected mentors with a variety of experience and a variety of verticals of tokenization as well, not just only on Solana either. It was important to us that we grab people with very varying backgrounds of how they've done tokenization, from meme coins to utility products to IP to media. We wanted to make sure we had a wide select of mentors, because the truth is, if you only got your advice from one person that has reached that level of success with a token, you'd be doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
And that mentor would tell you that themselves, frankly speaking. To answer your question about how it went when I approached them, many of them, when I realized what was happening with internet capital markets, I was feeling this momentum building up in April. I approached many of them in April, May. The answers weren't very quick back. Probably reached out to like 100 or so people in my network that I had been building with for the past few years. And not a lot of quick responses there, and that's okay, normal. There's a few really great mentors that came on board initially on and kind of helped me get the momentum going. So as I'm building up the mentor pool, and I'm sort of expecting this is going to be a pretty small stealth launch. Not a lot of people are going to know about this, and I was kind of okay with that, because at the time when I was building, it was in June. Sentiment around ICM was at the all-time low in June.
Yep.
So I was sort of expecting that this was going to be a slow grind for the incubator. Out dropped Project Crypto from the SEC, basically claiming that tokenized utility products on chain are no longer considered securities by the SEC. Instantly, all those people I reached out to all sort of came to me at that point. They all started reaching back out.
Yeah.
And then I went from a position of hoping people want to join. Then I got into a position of curating.
Yeah.
Started taking calls, started meeting with all these different mentors that wanted to join the DAO. And I really just selected the people who I felt like were the best bag workers, the people who I felt like really earned their positions where they tokenized. I didn't want to just get a bunch of VPs or people who were on teams that launched. I wanted founders. I wanted founder mentors, people that know what it's like to tokenize and know what a red day feels like, knows what green days feel like, that can really help the projects we incubate guide them through those different varying levels. And that was important to me because the incubator isn't just going to help them TGE. We're going to continue to incubate them post TGE too and guide them through that process, you know.
That's very well said. I think, like I said, just a moment back, it's commendable to see how you got this stacked team of mentors, advisors, and then you're still continuing adding them. And obviously, the good part about it, like you said, is like you're taking people from all sorts of verticals, and most importantly, not just focused on one chain, right? But talking about chains, Mercy. I know you're very focused, or at least for now, to have ICM.run incubate project successfully on Solana. What's the thesis behind it? What's the conviction behind it? And why Solana?
Why Solana? Simple. It's TVL, total value locked. There's a lot of philosophical debates on, are we in a bull cycle or are we in a bear cycle? My take on that is that we have reached enough on-chain liquidity, on-chain, particularly in Solana, that has created this pendulum that makes it safe for projects to tokenize and not have to have a token underlying asset that's up only. Historically, if you wanted to tokenize a project, meme coin, usually you need to tokenize that during a time period when you're at all-time highs or climbing to all-time highs. Historically, in the past, if you had tokenized a project on chain and we're in 2022 down only token, that token will flop, historically speaking. So we've reached this stage right now in the Solana ecosystem, particularly where there's so much value locked up on chain that it's created this safety net bed of interest for new speculative assets to exist. And that's never really been the case. The other side of the coin is protocol revenue. Protocol revenue is really important. A lot of people chase market caps, but I think it's important to follow like revenue. I joined the space in 2022, which I'm not an OG by a stretch. So just, I've been here for a while, but not a long, long while. I joined the slide going down though, meaning that I joined in 2022 while the tokens and everything was just declining in value. While I was riding that slide down, I got to see who stuck around and who did it during that time, which protocols made it and which ones did not. It was typically the protocols that had revenue that stuck around because they had a runway. And founders could continue to push their product forward because their protocol is producing enough revenue to create the runway for them to continue doing those. And I would argue that those are the protocols that are still relevant now. Now, if we talk about revenue on Solana, we have protocols on revenue on Solana that outcompete chains in revenue, combined revenue. And that's not something to not like pay attention to. It's important that you want to select a chain where there's protocol revenue, where there's demand. And for us, internet capital markets really recently spun from the liquidity and attention that Pump Fund particularly created on chain. DEX volume has spiked tremendously, a lot due to Pump Fund. And the reason why we have this whole internet capital markets, frankly, is because of on-chain trader volume. It's an important thing. And that exists exclusively on Solana for the most part. If we're talking about volume, most volume. Now, that's not to say that there isn't Base and there's not other chains as well that are creeping up and figuring this out, but I'm sure many will. I'm sure every chain's going to want a slice of the pie of the ICM narrative. I'm sure every single one will go after it. But if we're talking about where it can succeed, it is on Solana. The other things that's also important too is the technology of Meteora, one of our biggest mentors in our DAO, one of our biggest backers as well, is that Meteora has created this phenomenal tech stack. If you look at the other decentralized exchanges built on top of Solana, Radium, Orca, there's others as well too, like PumpSwap, AMM as well. Meteor has built this liquidity providing engine that's exclusively unique. It's the most potable technology that exists for liquidity management. The reason why that's really important is because Meteor has built this very potable technology for launchpads to build on top of them, where in most cases, like building on top of Radium is very rigid, meaning that there's not much customizability. An example that's Believe app. We obviously are seeing them, the better or worse, all over the time, obviously, and sure, that's another fun conversation.
We'll get into it just in a bit.
Believe app created this 2% fee per trade. And as a trader, when I swap in or swap out, buy or sell, 75% of that 2% goes to the founder. And that's unique. My favorite thing to do when I talk to founders, especially from other chains or from maybe the centralized launchpad ecosystem like Seedify, is I love to pull up charts and show them. And look, here's a chart here. Went from 1.5 to 250,000, back up to 1.2, down to 300, up to 2, down to 6, right? Over the course of 2 months, I'll ask them, how much do you think that founder's earned in fees? Or what would you assume? I'll usually get a number like 30,000, 50,000, and I'll hit them with try $600,000.
Yeah.
Talk about runway. Talk about the ability for an indie stage founder without having to give up any equity, sell any of their tokens, which normally is what you'd have to do.
100%.
Sell a lot of tokens, and now they don't need to. And traders don't mind. Traders aren't looking for
That's a very small fraction for them.
Yeah, they're not looking for a 2% gain. They're looking for a 2x, a 3x, 4x, or at least a 1.5x, right? So, a trader that puts in $1,000 buy and then they only see, 980 or whatever that number really is, whatever that specific number is, right? They're not batting an eye at that, And the fact that they know that the founder is now not having to open market sell their token in order to get value back out, it's created this very advantageous environment for new founders tokenizing. So that's why I chose Solana. And also, too, I just have had the most success with tokenizing on Solana. And until somebody else can do otherwise, that's why I'm very there.
I definitely agree. I think, what you said about TVL and you talk about ecosystem. I mean, we all can't deny the fact that Solana has been through 2 bear cycles, right? And the community is unparalleled when it comes to liquidity, right? And of course, a lot of it is memes. A lot of people know Solana for memes, like, hey, that's the casino chain, and that's why it'll never die, because memes will never die, right? And I think internet capital market kind of brings in that new twist of hey, let's trade utility tokens the way we trade memes, right? I think that's the new fun way to kind of do things. But again, do I kind of understand this? You're not going to shy away from, launching projects on Base, for instance, in the future, or is this a very Solana-focused incubation program?
The DAO will serve tokenize exclusively on Solana.
Okay.
Because all of our technology is built into Solana.
Fair.
Now, that being said, it wouldn't be that hard to use a multi-chain DAO technology to build on top of it.
Yeah.
But also, it's not inherently about where we launch. It's also about launching tokens. Also comes down to people capital, people relationships, distribution, and those core relationships are mostly built in Solana for this DAO particularly. Now, unless there's an edge case where that's no longer the case, I think that edge case could be abstract, because I obviously think there's a lot of value for the consumer chain to own internet capital markets too, right? I think there's Solana and abstract kind of very, very aligned communities there. There's already a very aligned token with Pangu on Solana and abstract. So these are very, very, very aligned communities. I think that wouldn't be too far off, but unlikely you'll see us launch on Base or AVAX for that to say. But we have mentors in our DAO like AZ Flynn. He's the founder of DAO's World, which is basically a multi-chain EVM DAO tech. So if we get approached with somebody that really is a base builder, we'll just defer, to the builders in our network on those other chains that are relevant to those other chains. Albeit we haven't had much that fit those other molds.
Fair enough.
But if you learn anything in crypto, you know that when there's a value arbitrage, that window closes and shuts fast. And I think that we're going to see that window shut really, really quickly over the next 6 months for ICM on all the chains. I think we're going to see a massive aggression towards this over the next 6 months into Q1 and Q2 next year.
It's going to be an interesting one for sure. Hey, Morsi, you touched upon a very interesting topic that I wanted to ask you about as well, right? Launchcoin or Believe, right? Believe app. Well, I guess, when Ben launched Launchcoin or Believe now, I think that was when a lot of people wanted to believe in something because they felt like this was just the perfect idea to bring tokenized, real world businesses or, ideas or founders building successful business in the Web2 world into Web3. Now, I think, we didn't really see much or massive success from that, right? And I guess my question to you is, what do you think went wrong? And how are you guys trying to fix this?
Well, I'm not part of Believe app, and I can't say it's my responsibility to fix it. We're a launchpad agnostic incubator. Ben is an ethereal character, like an Elon Musk, just a very ethereal character in the space. Crypto seems to be very forgiving for those types of personalities for some reason, for better or worse. And the context of Launchcoin is important. Ben was a Web2 founder who joined the space. He said it himself. He never even traded Solana prior to this. He wanted to create a product called Cloud.me that made it easy for creators to own their value. The product never hit PMF. He launched his own coin, Pasternak Coin, and he never intended for Pasternak Coin to be a coin that would be the representation for tens of billions of dollars in trading volume, if we're being honest with ourselves, right? Don't think he ever thought that Pasternak Coin was going to be the representation coin for tens of billions of dollars in trading volume. When he launched that coin, he committed to it. He rebranded Cloud.me to Believe app, and he rebranded that token to Launchcoin. The reason I think mostly he did that is because he was a novice, as many of us are when we joined the space. I think he listened to traders. I think he listened to crypto Twitter, who pitchforked up, said one founder, one coin. One founder, one coin. I'm a founder in the space. I've tokenized a few things successfully, I'd say. I've reached over $1 billion market cap in previous ventures. I know what it takes to get there. A fully diluted token that represents a personal creator is not set up to be a multi-billion dollar launch coin token. It's just not set up for that. So when you have success and you find PMF way too early, there's something in the industry that's called tech debt. And they had a lot of tech debt, tremendous tech debt. Anybody who thinks they're going to launch permissionless launchpad and be the de facto launchpad for tens of billions of dollars in trading volume, I think they're going to hit PMF perfectly on the first try. Hasn't been around long enough to know that that's never been the case. No one ever has. And whenever someone points at Believe app and says they did it wrong, I always urge that person to say, point to something better. And the answer is no one can, because it's a new industry. It's a new niche. Me as a founder, I'm very forgiving for primitives, and launch coin, launch app, Believe coin, whatever it is now, it's a primitive, and there needs to be a lot of patience, a lot of forgiveness for founders that are innovating. And I'm deeply bullish on them. I'm deeply bullish that they're going to be successful. What's very important to note, though, is founder sentiment among the Launchcoin ecosystem is egregiously positive. I would know. I talk to every single founder in the
Interesting
ecosystem.
Yep.
The sentiment there is extremely positive. They're very happy with how things are going. They're very happy with the success that they've had. Now, I only think it's crypto Twitter consensus that wants Launchcoin bags to go up, which is fine. I'm not mad at that. I think we should listen to crypto Twitter consensus. We should listen to traders. They're ultimately the ones that drive the value here in the first place, or the ones that drive the volume. But also, to be fair, that when we call something a failure, we have to understand why we're calling it that, right? And I think if we boil it down to because crypto Twitter is not happy, I would just argue that most of the time they're wrong in most cases. And this, in my opinion, is one of those cases that I egregiously believe that Believe app's on the right track. There is a lot of tech debt they had to pay, And I think that they've paid that debt. And I can't leak what's been shared with me that's privileged information, but I can tell you that the best is still yet to come with that team. And this positioning by migrating to Believe is funny enough. By the way, launch coin Pasternak coin was launched on Radium, which isn't even their deck stack, by the way. So now they're migrating back over to Meteora, right? Which obviously makes sense. That's where they're building, right? But building it this way with this new distribution allows this coin to be $1 billion coin, which is important to note because it's not a meme coin, it's not a creator coin. It is a coin that represents the value of a multi-billion volume launchpad, right? And the other fun fact is that they have a war chest that they have been acquiring from fees that they've been telling everybody they intend to use as a buyback mechanism. But would you buy back a coin you don't own any supply of? And would you put tens of millions of dollars of your treasury into buying back a coin you own zero supply of, that you own zero distribution on? That's not even on your own decks. And that's not something crypto Twitter traders are really open to talking about, right? That's valid. They don't care about these things. But that matters if you're a founder that is implying that that's something they owe to do.
I think I'm trying to connect the dots here. And I can only hear bullish stuff coming out of you right now, especially when you say Meteora, big times ahead for Meteora, especially with their whole airdrop. And I think they've been building a lot of good stuff, a lot of launch pads, MetaDAO and stuff. Some really good projects, OMFG and a couple of other ones that I've really had the chance to speak with. But connecting the dots, Meteora. Big things coming out, best yet to come, buybacks. Well, maybe it's time to believe again.
I think that it's their responsibility to prove that to the market. It's not my positioning as an incubator to tell everybody Believe App's the best place to launch. But I can tell you that the incubator, we intend to launch on Believe App projects there. That has nothing to do with their sentiment as a launchpad. It has to do with founders' success on Believe App. Period. That's really all it comes down to.
Mercy, one thing that I noticed while the Believe app frenzy was going on, right? I saw a lot of good projects, or let's say a lot of good Web2 founders walking into the Web3 territory, wanting to experiment, right? And I think I use the word experiment because, obviously, like you said, it's almost difficult or impossible to kind of hit the bullseye on your first shot in Web3, especially. Especially when you have no community in Web3. You have a successful business in Web2 or whatever that may look like. But Web3 is very different. I mean, us traders, we speculate on news. We speculate on future value. We barely look at fundamentals and tokenomics and real revenue, right? And I think this is where I've personally seen and invested a lot of good founders that walked in, and you're like, oh, holy shit, they run a very successful e-com, drop shipping, real businesses, but somehow their tokens don't work out, right? How do you perceive this? How do you kind of think about this as a model that eventually kind of, matches between fundamental and Web3 expectations?
I think you just described the thesis for ICM DAO Run perfectly, to put it frankly. Yeah, I think, to put it simply, I was there for the frenzy. I watched a lot of founders come and leave. I watched some founders trust crypto advisors that they knew from years ago that completely farmed them on Believe App. The biggest issue in the beginning of Believe App were these third-party players that would go and target your Web2 founders, say, hey, we can help you launch on Believe App, snipe up the supply and dump on the open markets. There's a Sybil for a little while there. They've mostly stopped now, but there's a Sybil for a while there that had farmed out, I think, close to $3 million from launches. So I spoke with those founders that got farmed. Some of these founders were top four apps on the App Store that just got completely destroyed by that, completely floored. I mean, imagine you've been building a Web2 business for years, grinding it for years, getting customers, and then tokenizing and trusting somebody that's your crypto advisor, and they take you to your slaughter. Crypto Twitter's a gauntlet, and there's no doubt about that. Crypto traders have harsh expectations. There's no doubt about that. Web2 founders trapping a coin into the open market without having any expectation to what to expect with that, in most cases, are going to fall short. Actually, almost all cases have fallen short of those expectations. The reason why tokens trade at a premium in crypto, I think is very simple to break it down. In my opinion, there are trader narratives and there's trader expectations. A token that trades at a premium, if we take one perp dex here and another perp dex here, fundamentally same product, fundamentally same UI UX, fundamentally same experience, nonce on the points, nonce on the tokenomics, right? But we say fundamentally the same product. Why does one trade at a higher premium than the other? And a lot of it has to come down to trader narrative expectations. How well is the founder good at communicating? How good is the founder at building their X personality? How good is the founder at building community? How good is the founder at building presence with their branding? How good is the IP? How good is the sentiment among culture traders, particularly if we're talking about Solana? Culture traders and culture callers in Solana are very important. You'll have plenty of trading communities I wouldn't call culture callers. I call them volume callers. These guys are just going to call a coin, dump into their own community. It's a big issue. We could get into that another time. But there's also culture callers in Solana. I'd say those culture callers are like Rasmer, Thread Guy, Frank D. Gods, all for better or worse, all culture callers. Ansem, and many others as well. I would say are culture callers. They're crypto Twitter looks for consensus, especially in Solana.
Yep.
And if they see that the culture callers are backing something, historically speaking, those traders will typically follow suit.
Yeah.
Tokens that trade at a premium have far more to do with matching those trader expectations than they have to do with fundamentally good products. Truthfully, for being completely forthright with ourselves here. That's why meme coins can be successful.
Yep.
Because they're phenomenal at matching trader expectations.
100%.
A lot of what we do with our DAO when we're preparing projects to tokenize is to lean into the culture, lean in really hard into that culture. Founder of OGP, a project we're helping to tokenize and bring to market, he's wearing a Milady PFP. There's a reason for that. Founder of Zynga, multi-billion-dollar exit. He's not a super degen guy, but you have to lean into the culture.
Yep.
You have to lean into it. And this is who is creating your volume. This is your investor. At the end of the day, if we would be careful with our terms, this is your trader. This is your volume. The more you feel like home to them, the more your market cap, frankly, will reflect that. Now, these things also do pair with luck and timing. That's important to know too. And you can still do all those things and completely fall short of the obscurity issue, which is you just never make it to the culture callers. Our goal with the DAO is to be able to have enough people capital around that. If we're not one person away from someone who's a culture caller, we've got 10 other or 15 other people who are in this DAO that can nudge something into the forefront of attention of people who are culturally important. Then beyond the culture aspects, there's what I would consider the right curve community of Solana. These are the development communities. These are the Merts. These are the Tallies. These are the DAO governance guys of Solana. Now, these guys aren't going to be swayed by a Milady PFP. These guys aren't going to be swayed by a really cute pie sheet of your tokenomics. They're going to want to read deep, in-depth tokenomics. They want to see very thoughtful comparisons, very thoughtful tokenomic models, thoughtful white docs. And most of launching a project is matching the trader expectations at a brain rot level speed at the top of the funnel, but allowing the people who want more to go deeper, 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 deeper. And all of these things come into some form of a melting pot. And I'd be lying to you if I said I knew how these ingredients mix together to make the outcome. Because if everybody had that answer, we would all just be duplicating that, frankly speaking, right? If everybody really knew the best way to tokenize and launch a coin, everyone would just be duplicating that exclusively and repeating that, regurgitating it. But it's a moving needle. And by having these mentors in our DAO that have a lot of varying experience with tokenization, I think it keeps us very close to where that needle's moved. And that's important to us because we know that this needle, the moment we launch something today, the get to the same result does not look like 1 + 1 = 2. It might look like 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. These things are very moving needles. And yeah, I think that was the long answer, but
I think that was perfect, because I think that really, like you said, explains what ICM.run is, and just kind of giving the rationale behind the thought process, right? And how you guys are tackling these nuances that actually bring about the perfect recipe, as you mentioned. And I guess everyone here in crypto, if you've been here long enough, you kind of understand that everything in this industry is an experiment until proven success, right? And the truth is, a lot of times we are part of that experiment. We are the result, or like we are the collateral damage of that experiment, right? It just depends on which part of the tail end are you eventually fall into. But again, the fact that we're so nascent as an industry, and now you're touching upon tokenization of, I'd say, real businesses or utility projects, I think this is going to give a whole new shift in paradigm to what crypto has to offer, right? Because I think whatever we've seen in the past couple of months is really just like the tip of the iceberg, as you grow way, 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 way deeper into real businesses. And I've spoken to a lot of institutions. I was in Singapore last week for Token 2049. I had the privilege of speaking with a lot of institutions, and I'm already seeing this shift in trend where a lot of these bigger boys are trying to go acquire a lot of the Web2 big boys, or let's say businesses that already have massive distribution, and bring them into Web3, and then just plug and play all these interesting business models like prediction markets, perp dexes, gamblify products, right? Products that already have PMF in the crypto market, but you're just matching them with the mass distribution, which in one way or the other, you want to call them ICM.run at a larger institution scale or ground level. I think the trend is shifting towards there, right?
I agree.
Now, Mercy, I remember a couple of weeks ago, and maybe you might need to refresh all of us on the numbers, but when you guys opened up the application, you had hundreds of applications flood in like within a couple of hours, or let's say I think 48 hours or so. Tell us more about where we are with those kind of numbers. What kind of applications did you see, and perhaps what was the DAO, or what is the DAO most interested in so far?
Yeah, so the DAO has a sub-team that is an incubator within the DAO. The mentors are not all working within that incubator. The mentors serve to vote on the incubated projects. The DAO is led by Zhao. He is the formerly exited now CEO of PokerStarter. So he leads the incubator. I would say that he is the one that plays the orchestra, and I would say I'm one of the instruments in that team. And yeah, we've received now hundreds of applicants. We, on a weekly basis, will review those applicants. The incubator team will kind of like run through which ones match our thesis, which ones do not. The ones that do match our thesis, we run second round interviews with those teams. We field more questions to them as well. And what we do is we kind of polish the application, and we do something called benchmarking, where we'll present to the mentors every week a series of projects that have applied that we feel like fit our mold. Then the mentors will then go vote on those projects. The ones that they say yes to, we'll pass through. Ones they say no to, we'll ask for feedback. We'll submit that feedback to those teams, essentially. We've gotten a variety of them.
Is there any
Wide variety.
Is there any type of industry or niche that I'd say you are particularly interested to see more of, or like bullish on, for instance?
I've been impressed so far with the quality that's come through. So I'm removing my expectations. Now, to remove myself as a key man here, I don't make the decisions for the projects we incubate, and it has to be that way. Being a bit of a figurehead now for ICM.run, someone has a little bit of, emotional X now, you could say. I don't want to create this situation where projects are approaching me, having conversations with me, privileged information with me, with the expectation that that's going to lead to something more with the incubator. The incubator is decentralized. It's managed by a team The voting mechanisms decentralized is managed by the mentors. The best thing that I can do to serve those projects is once they get past the incubator stage, I can do what I do best. I'm an operator. I can make sure we get into the meat and potatoes with those teams. Design thoughtful rollout, design thoughtful tokenomics, design thoughtful strategy to bring them to market. And that's really where I enjoy spending my time.
No, I just wanted to ask, like, and with everything that you've just mentioned, I assume, and of course, it takes a lot of time and energy from the team, the mentors. What sort of numbers are you looking to incubate from? Is it per batch, per season? What does that look like?
We wanted to be cautious with the first round. So we only selected 2 projects. One that we were able to announce because their launch mechanism wasn't at risk for attack factor. That's OGP, Open Game Protocol, led by Justin Wald. Now, because their launch mechanism won't be a bonding curve, there's no risk of us talking about us incubating them and then suddenly someone's now front running them, sniping their launch and destroying all their potentiality of success. We have accepted another project into the incubator that I can't share much information about, but they will be a traditional bonding curve launch. I can't even leak the launch pad they're going to launch on because obviously don't want to create any type of friction or confusion or front running of the token. So simply put, the public won't really know that we have been the incubator behind that team till about 72 hours after TGE for those projects that we can't announce. And that also should create healthy speculation. Are they behind them? Are they not behind them? That should create some healthy natural speculation. And then, of course, once we announce, I think that should provide some authority and trust to that team that this is a quality team, quality product that matched our mentors' expectations for what is a good project to tokenize. Our role right now is if any of those founders leak out, ICM that runs incubating us, if that comes back to us, we stop.
Go all in, go all in, go all in.
Yeah, 100%.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I guess on the application side of things, one last question that I was a bit more curious on. I assume, and maybe what are the percentages that you're seeing from founders that are not in the space? I obviously assume that over time, with the success of the first few projects, you're going to eventually attract the real builders that are coming out from the Web2. But have you already kind of seen those kind of interest?
So I would say that the DAO majority receives mostly Web3 applicants. There's a reason for that. It's because there isn't an on-chain incubator. The mentors all own launch pads. They're all somewhat competitors, actually. I'll say ICM.run is something of like the international waters of ICM, where everyone's agreeing to play nice for the better good of ICM, frankly speaking.
Yep.
You'll see Launchpad founder A supporting and helping a project go to market on their competitor's Launchpad with the knowledge and intention that this is a public good.
Yep.
This is a good thing that we do this. So we have Launchpad founders referring us their projects, approaching them because those teams don't have a native incubator. We have Meteora referring us projects going to them. We have Believe app referring projects going to them. We have Seedify referring projects going to them. And many of the other mentors too, just through the natural word of mouth, are referring projects in. And then there's just the socials, so just the general socials, someone who sees us on the timeline, sees what we're doing. Get a lot of applicants from Alliance style. So I would say that's mostly Web3 products. Now, the cool thing though is that I've been planning a lot of events and catalysts in the Web2 communities. So, for example, I'll be in New York this next week. I'll be doing a couple different Web2 startup events where I'll be talking about internet capital markets with some YC alum and some other traditional Web2 startup communities. I'll also be doing some events with startup community. There's an X community on X ran by Adam, a really good friend of mine. He runs another X account called Best of Live Audio. We just met through the Spaces world over the years. He runs a community on X, has like 250,000 plus members, all Web2 startups. He's hosted Gary Tan, Paul Atkins. He's hosted a lot of like big Web2 legends in the space.
Oh.
And we'll be doing some events with him to like educate on internet capital markets on Solana with those communities too, to like educate like how this works essentially. And this is all with the intention, not that we maybe will incubate every single one of these Web2 startups that come along.
As you spread the word.
Educate them,
Yep.
spread the word, go for the public goods angle, go for the education angle. Naturally, the launch pads within our incubator will absorb those launches. Again, further supporting the DAO, further supporting the builders within our DAO anyways. And our goal is maybe we find a few unicorns there as well. Maybe matches the expectations as well.
My man doing God's work. Well, I guess, that's for me one of the key, I'd say, factors when I kind of like wanted to be part of the contributor is the passion to kind of make this more than just the usual Web3 circle jerk, right? And I think I say that because we have to kind of see a refreshed batch of founders that have been, I don't want to sideline, never exposed to the crypto world or been hesitant to join or dip their foot into the world, into this world because of all the negative connotations and impressions that they've had of this industry, right? And if we truly want to see blockchain or like Web3 or crypto in general succeed, we must bring the successful founders, or at least the aspiring founders with good intention, into this world with the right guidance.
I think that the private equity world of Web2 startups, trillions of dollars of sideline capital, trillions of dollars of assets that are not on chain, is probably the biggest opportunity that crypto has to onboard the masses. And it's one of those opportunities that is like, Luca called it one of the golden buckets of crypto. And just like how he said it really well on the last space we hosted together, I couldn't agree more that I don't really know if the launch pads that exist today will be the launch pads that do onboard those masses. Maybe they will. I hope they will. But also, I'm not loyal to a launch pad. I'm loyal to the narrative. I'm loyal to the concept. I'm loyal to the success of those founders joining the space, frankly speaking. I've been offered buckets of money by tons of different launch pads in this space. I won't name names, to be the de facto co-incubator of said launch pad. There's just no amount of money that's as important to me as like solving this problem, like corely solving this problem. The dividends from the value of that greatly exceeds the alignment with a launch pad, particularly. The DAO will support any launch pad that's solving this problem and cares about solving this problem particularly. And we won't do it for the money. We'll do it because the founders can be successful there, frankly speaking. One thing that's really not completely public knowledge is that I'm also raising a fund, like a traditional Web2 fund. And this fund will exist to invest in new primitives, invest in new launch pads, invest in new ICM teams. And the DAO will serve as the incubator to that fund. And that's something else I've been kind of working quietly on as well. Reason why I haven't really put that out there super publicly as well is just because I also don't want people getting involved with the DAO purely just from the capital formation that's happening from this fund. The people who are part of the DAO know, the people who are involved with the DAO know this. And there's a reason for that. It's because, I believe in this narrative greatly enough to put it all on the line for it. I believe it's like the best opportunity we have from a VC standpoint, from a DAO incubator standpoint, from a DAO ecosystem public goods standpoint. And the DAO will just some will be the watering hole, the YC ecosystem for ICM on chain, long tail. And there's going to be a lot of great stuff that comes out of this. But if there's one thing you learn quickly, is that whenever there's a value and there's legal framework and it exists in the capital formation layer of the world, the United States, and there's some form of legal clarity, the gap closes really quickly. And we're in a very opportunistic gray zone, but that once the green zone occurs, it closes instantly. We already see a lot of builders sort of front running it,
Yep.
what I mean? Kind of risking it all on the line for hoping for that green zone.
Yep.
But nothing's stopping the Robinhoods, the NASDAQs of the world, the moment this green zone occurs,
Yep.
from them all jumping into. And that's why it's important that we stay launchpad agnostic. Once that green zone occurs, Robinhood's a sneeze away.
Yep.
NASDAQ is into that tokenizing. They're a sneeze away from dominating the entire internet capital markets layer. So there's some really good stuff that's going to come out. And
Bullish
environment, that's a gray zone right now. So we're seeing a lot of gray zone builders, which crypto is known for gray zone builders. But I think we see some really world class founders join the space once that green zone occurs. And it seems like we're closer than ever.
bullish, man, bullish. Because I think the closing caveat to that is, like I said, man, I think the institutions are just getting in, right? And we're seeing this trend of like, the Krakens of the world, the Robinhoods of the world, acquiring like Deribits, or like, Coinbase acquiring these big boys within the space. Like, there's going to be this world whereby all these guys are going to acquire distribution funnels, and eventually liquidity and volume and user base. And essentially, when you become the center core heart of that, I'd say the mechanism to launch these future unicorns per se, sky's the limit, brother.
We'll see. I'm very if I had to make a poly market bet if a prediction market bet on when that green zone occurs, I would say I'd make a strong bet for Q1, honestly, next year. Really.
Oh, wow. That's soon, eh? That's soon.
I think there's some other people who'd be a little more optimistic and say Q4, but I'll be the cynic in the room.
Hey, let's actually get that up on Polymarket, man. I'll probably have to if not Polymarket, I'll probably get a Farouk to do it on Myriad or something.
That'd be legendary. I think there has to be, I imagine, soon as well, for what it's worth. There's got to be so many people betting on that.
We're gonna have to do this just for fun, just for the culture's sake, as at the very least. And then that came live from the Bay Show.
My short change, I'll just put like 50,000 in. Nothing great.
Pocket change, bro. Pocket change. Mercy, I was actually just gonna ask you, what's one last key takeaway, or let's say an alpha that you could share with all our friends that were watching this show right now, and what's to come, right? And I think that was a very beautiful I'd say explanation. But if there's something that you missed out on, here's the time now. And again, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and maybe if there's any small alpha you want to give us.
The thing that, if you're watching this right now, you're gonna ask yourself is, where do I find these ICM coins? It's probably the number one question that gets asked. And the answer to that, unfortunately, is it's not solved yet. So to speak to the builders, there's a wide open gap right there. There's tremendous demand for seeking, indexing, and aggregating ICM tokens, Solana or elsewhere. Then the most commonly requested and highest demand that everyone has when they hear about this is, where are they all at? Well, how do I find these coins? And the answer is, nobody seems to care to solve that yet. But I think somebody who does is going to be very happy. And I would say keep an eye on Moby Screener by the Asset Dash team. They seem to have some interest in covering ICM and aggregating it. But get on the timeline, look for ICM coins. There's obviously the Believe app ecosystem, but ICM is kind of like, it's not chain, it's kind of chain agnostic. You know what I mean? There's ICM coins everywhere, but it's a growing industry, and it's only going to get a lot bigger from here. But again, thank you so much for having me, Sahib. This was really, really great, and I appreciate you contributing to the DAO as well. It means a lot to me that you were also one of the few people in the beginning phase that I approached that was eager, which meant a lot to me in the beginning phase before all this bullish SEC news came and everybody else pile drived in afterwards.
I will be honest, I need to be way more active than I am right now, because I think there's a lot more to contribute, and there's already so many ideas brewing in my mind right now, which we should take up out after this show. But Mercy, man, it's always a pleasure to have to speak with you, and again, I really appreciate all the insights, your thought process, and all that you've shared with us here. Guys, that's Mercy, the core contributor of ICM.run. And I'll drop in some links here below just so you can make sure to follow them. A lot of exciting news coming up. Until then, guys, stay blessed, stay based. Signing off. Cheers.